Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the new lecture on clinical drug literature. The material for this chapter has been taken and adapted from the textbook of Remington, The Science and Practice of Pharmacy. This is the outline of the lecture. Firstly, we will be having the introduction of the clinical drug literature. Then we will be discussing the relationship between the pharmacist and the drug information. Afterwards, we will be discussing the type of literature, and finally, we will be discussing about the primary literature and how it is evaluated. So, a lot of information is available regarding the drugs and the treatment of the diseases, and this information is available into the books, into the hard copy form. It is available into the various websites, or the different organizations are providing these information, and it has to be effectively used, and it is the responsibility of the healthcare workers, specifically the pharmacist, to assess, review, analyze, evaluate, and interpret the clinical drug literature, so they can use this data very effectively. Before the usage of a data, the pharmacist or the healthcare practitioner has to evaluate the authenticity and review it before the practical application of the information. The drug information is available in various categories. The information may be about the side effects or the adverse effects of the drugs. It may be about the drug interaction, the therapeutic uses, the teratogenicity caused by the drugs, the stability of the drugs, compatibility of the different combination of drugs that have been prescribed, product identification and availability, whether the product is available or not, the specific product is available or not, what will be the dosage and administration of different drugs, what is the toxicity of a specific drug, the pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics of the drugs, the pharmacogenomics, what is the interaction between the drug and the genomics of the patient, what is the impact of the different genetic compositions onto the drugs. This information is also available. We have multiple of the sources or multiple of the research studies which show link between the drugs and the genetics of the patients. We have studies or the information regarding the health related quality of life, that's how the quality of life can be improved with the use of the drugs. We have pharmacoeconomics, in which we study that how we can decrease the cost of the treatment or cost of the therapy, and we can also go for the efficacy of the drugs, in which we can compare in between the two drugs of the same class, that whether this drug is effective or the other drug is effective, or even we can compare in between the drugs which are from the two different classes and which can be used for the treatment of the same disease, and we can identify that whether the drug from this class is effective or the drug from another class is effective or not. So there are wide areas in which we have the information, and to use it effectively we must know about the clinical drug literature, what type of the clinical drug literature is available, and how you can best utilize this information which is available in our surroundings. The pharmacist is very much involved in the dissemination of the drug related information. The pharmacist may have to carry out the literature retrieval. Uh, Someone can ask the pharmacist that whether this information is correct or not, so he will go and find out into the literature that is available, already available, and then analyze it and confirm it whether this thing is right or not. Pharmacist is also involved into the reporting of the adverse drug events, so he has the better knowledge about the adverse drug events, and consultation may be required from the pharmacist whether this drug is causing this adverse event or not. The pharmacist has better information regarding to drug usage decisions as well. Pharmacist is involved into educational activities. There are various educational activities they are going on onto the regular basis, and pharmacist is involved into these activities. and pharmacist has to disseminate information. So it is a very much important for the pharmacist to have the authentic information. And eventually the clinical research that has been carrying on, as I have already told you, that the clinical pharmacy or clinical practice is a dynamic process. So research is continuously going on regarding the drugs. So pharmacist is continuously involved in that research, and continuously pharmacist has to give input, or questions are being asked from the different healthcare professionals or even the patients regarding the drugs. And the pharmacist has to provide that information to the physicians, or maybe the nursing staff, or maybe the paramedical staff, or patient can ask about the drugs, or the adverse effects of the drugs, or the therapeutic use of the drug. So it is a skill of the pharmacist, that how he communicates or delivers that information to the healthcare providers or the patients. And of course, when he is communicating that information, he should be sure that the information communicated is correct. And for the retrieval or receiving of the correct information, the pharmacist must have the information about the clinical drug literature, that what type of the clinical drug literature is available. Now, as earlier discussed, the clinical pharmacy is a dynamic process or a dynamic field. So, new information or new uses of the drugs are coming onto the regular basis. Sometimes a new therapeutic use is identified, sometimes a new adverse effect of the drug is identified. So, the pharmacist should use this information on evidence based medicine. Okay, he has to evaluate the different literatures, and onto the evidence basis that this adverse effect has been caused by this drug, so this drug should not be used. This therapeutic effect has been shown by this drug, so this drug should be used for this therapeutic effect. It should be implemented by the pharmacist when he is going through such literature and he is finding some new thing. So based on this, his knowledge and evidence that he is getting from the literature, he must implement these things. But while implementing these things, he should also consider some other things: the risks and benefit ratio of the use of new information, whether the when new information or new therapeutic effect is used for the specific patient, whether it will be beneficial for this patient, or whether it will be riskier for the patient. So if it is more beneficial for the certain condition of the patients, we will go for the use of that drug. If the risk factor is more, we will not go for the use of that drug on that specific patient. We will also have to go for the look into the inconvenience, whether the use of this new therapy is convenient to be used in the scenario or in the premises in which the pharmacist is carrying out his practice, whether the cost of that new therapy or the cost of that new drug will can be borne by the patient. So all this information should be made into the consideration, and then it should be implemented onto the patients, or then it should be used into the practice. And while doing so, the pharmacist has to consider the hierarchy, that whether which authorities or which literature has approved this new therapeutic use of the drug, or this new adverse effect has been verified through which authorities. So based on these things, the pharmacist must implement new things into the therapy. The pharmacists are not only involved into the dissemination of the information or drug related knowledge, but they are also involved into the receiving of the new knowledge on from their experiences, and reporting these experiences or the effects of the drugs to the authorities. Like, the pharmacists are one of the major healthcare professionals who report the adverse effects to the Food and Drug Administration. The pharmacist can also report the medication errors to the US Pharmacopoeia via the medication errors reporting program. The pharmacists are not only involved in communicating the drug related information to the higher authorities which are working on worldwide, like the Food and Drug Administration or the United States Pharmacopoeia, which will eventually report the adverse effects or the therapeutic uses, new therapeutic uses of the drugs to the upcoming editions of their books. But the pharmacists are also in communications with the therapeutic pharmacy and therapeutic committees, which are constituted into the hospitals for the better working of the hospital, for the better utilization of the drugs. And the pharmacists are also giving their input in those the pharmacy and therapeutic committees for the better utilization of the drug. So everywhere from the hospital to throughout the World Health Organization, there is a role of pharmacist for the communication of the information related to the drugs. So, the information which is acquired by the pharmacist from any of the sources, maybe whatever he is practicing into a clinical facility, or the drug information that is available into the different books or the internet sources. So, he will have to communicate to the others. So, this communication of information can be going through the educational activities. The pharmacist will be with the nursing staff and the physicians during the medical rounds, and during these medical rounds the pharmacist will be communicating the information relating to the drugs to the other healthcare providers. The pharmacist can also issue the newsletters, uh, can also conduct the seminars and lectures regarding the new information, the changes taking place into the therapies. The pharmacist can also provide information to the patients, maybe in the verbal form or into the written form to the patients for the better therapeutic outcomes. The pharmacist can also participate into the clinical research trials, and because the pharmacist has better experience of sharing of the knowledge and communication of the knowledge, so the pharmacist can tell better about the effects of the drugs. The pharmacists are also involved into the functioning of the drug information centers. So the drug information centers are developed into the different hospital facilities, or maybe the universities who are teaching the health related subjects. In the drug information center, a pharmacist is available onto the telephonic line, and anyone from the physicians to the patients can call at the drug information centers, and the pharmacist will tell about the use of the drugs, that how a drug should be used to the patients, what will be the specific time, what will be the specific dose. This information can be communicated to the uh, uh, patients. The pharmacist can also communicate the dose related information or therapeutic related information to the physicians. Physician can call the drug information center, and pharmacist will provide them the latest information regarding the therapeutic uses of the drugs or the doses of the drugs. The drug information centers are also very effective into the poisoning cases. The pharmacist can provide on spot first aid for the patient onto the telephonic calls. They can also recommend the specific antidotes that are used for the treatment of the different poisoning cases to the physicians. So now, what type of the clinical literatures do we have? Now there are basically three types of the clinical drug literature, and these are depend upon the sources from which the information is acquired. So based on the sources, the clinical drug literature can be divided into primary drug literature from the primary sources, secondary drug literature from the secondary sources, and tertiary drug literature from the tertiary sources. Now into the next slides we will further elaborate these primary, secondary and the tertiary sources of the drug literature. So firstly, the tertiary sources of the clinical literature. Now this category of the clinical literature sources is the most smallest but the most authentic, because these contain the compendia that include the textbooks, okay, the review and the meta-analysis articles, the facts and the comparisons, or the micromedidex that is available online. Why it is most authentic? Because this acquires knowledge from different researches, and after confirmation from different researches, it is made into a book form that is revised after every maybe 3 years, 5 years, or the 7 years. But this information first it is authenticated from the various studies, and then it is incorporated into the textbook forms or the review or the meta analysis articles. So this is one of the most authentic form. So if we go for the advantages, it is the most convenient. You can if you need the information, you can simply take those textbooks, take those review or the meta-analysis articles, or go for the micro medex and easily acquire the information, authentic information. They are easy to use, quick access. These books are most often available everywhere, and they provide compact, they will provide information to the point information, and it will be a journal overview. Okay, it will not be so, the information may not be so deep, but it will be a general overview that everyone can understand the thing. However, the disadvantage of the tertiary sources is that it is incomplete. Now, as I already told you, the textbooks will be revised after every 3 years, or at least 5 years, or the 7 years. Now, when a textbook is revised after 5 years or the 7 years, then new in those 5 to 7 years, new information will be coming, and that information will not be incorporated for 5 to 7 years into the textbook. So that's why we can say the information will be incomplete. It will be outdated. The textbook will contain the information that was practiced 5 to 7 years before. Maybe that thing is not being followed nowadays. There will be chances of the most human bias, because it will be the information collected will be from the various human resources, and there will be more chances of the error. So there are chances of the bias, there are chances of the errors into the information. And finally, there will be lack of expertise and evidence, in a sense that that information will be collected from the different sources. Okay, and the people will be having the different expertise, the information will be collected from the different sources, so the authenticity will not be effective. So these are these advantages, but we can still say that the tertiary sources provide the most authentic information because it is verified from the various resources. If we go into the further details of the research articles that are available into the tertiary resource articles, these include the review articles, systematic reviews, and the meta-analysis studies. Now, what happens into the review articles? The information from different articles is collected, maybe regarding a specific drug, or maybe regarding a specific treatment of a specific disease. Okay, and these are collectively presented into a monograph form or a literature form. So all the information regarding a specific drug or a specific disease treatment will be available into a single research article, and that will provide a specific kind of the current thinking about a specific drug, or the therapeutic use of a specific drug, the adverse effect of a therapeutic drug, or a therapy for a disease, and it will be easily retrieved, and this information can be easily accessed, and we can confirm from the different sources. And this article, the review article, will verify that different people have carried out and have such an study, and they have proved this thing is happening. Into the systemic reviews, the information is also collected from the different research studies or from the different research articles, and they are collectively presented into a single research article called as the systemic review. In the systemic review, there are first further questions are taken up, or further hypotheses are made up, that if these studies have evaluated that this therapeutic effect of the drug is taking place, whether it is correct or not, whether it can be practically used or not, whether it will be beneficial for the patients or not. So such types of the questions are made into the systemic reviews, and by comparing different studies, a conclusion is made that whether these studies were effective or not, or whether this information uh, can be used onto the practical basis, and any of the problem into these studies will be identified, any of the errors into these studies will be identified, and any further recommendations for the improvement into the future researches will be given into the systemic reviews. Meta-analysis studies are collection of the published researches, and a large number of published researches are further analyzed into the meta-analysis studies, and specifically the statistical tools are applied to reach onto the conclusions. In the meta-analysis studies, specifically those situations of the clinical research are taken which are not providing the conclusive results. So a multiple of the researches are collected together. They are evaluated statistically, and the percentages are drawn. There are different statistical tests like the chi-square test, the student t test, okay, the z test. These different statistical tools are applied onto the data, and based on that, these statistical tools and these numbers, a decision is made whether this research or this effect is valid or not. So, into the meta-analysis studies, the statistical evidence is always present. The decision is made onto the statistics or the numbers that are present into the different research articles. And the meta-analysis studies are retrospective, means the researches were carried out into the past for the many years. Those studies will be had been carried out into the past. Now these studies are collectively presented then. So it is a retrospective, means we are discussing the past now. The secondary sources for the drug literature include the indexing and the abstracting services like the Medline. These have collection of different researches with them, and these help to locate and identify primary drug literature. The advantages of the secondary sources are to easy access to primary sources. The all the information, because the primary information or the primary sources are a bigger category, so they provide an easy access to the information which is coming from the primary sources, and it is current and up to date. Every new information, new research that is coming will be collectively present into the secondary sources. Their disadvantages is that these are costly, because these are services provided, and the companies who are providing these services may ask you to pay some money to get the services. And the disadvantage also that the retrieval can be difficult, means first you had downloaded some kind of the article, and afterwards some other time you again want to go for the same information, you will have to dig it out. The information, you will have to go through various research articles to get an specific information, and of course this will be a time consuming process. So these are certain examples of the indexing and abstracting services. Finally, the primary sources of the drug literature. These may include the reports in the journals. Various journals are publishing different reports, or the letters to the editors, or the research articles that are also sources of the primary information. There are different monographs that are published into the research journals. There sometimes there are different conferences, very knowledgeable conferences, and the proceedings of these conferences are published into the different journals, that and the information shared by the healthcare professionals can be used for the further researches. There are also certain symposia in which there is also knowledge sharing, and these can also be published into the journals or into the booklet form, and these are also one of the primary sources of the information. Now the primary sources are also very advantageous, They provide the drug knowledge. They talk about the research methodology, how the results are obtained. They help into the readers to evaluate that which drug is more effective, and these basically provide the current knowledge or the current practices about the drugs. And these are most unbiased because these are the people are practically doing uh, things, and they are sharing with others that by doing these things we are achieving these advantages, and if you do these things you can also get the advantages, or if you avoid these things you can avoid the disadvantages due to the irrational therapies. Though the primary literature is the most current, but it is not always correct, and sometimes wrong interpretations are made from the primary literature, or maybe the investigator is not presenting the results or not conducting the research in a proper way. So that's why we need the understanding of the basic study designs, what study designs or what study methods should be used for carrying out different studies, and we have to assess and validate whether the study conducted was in a proper way or not, or the clinical trials that were conducted were in proper way or not. If they were not into the proper way, the that information will not be useful. Like the researchers may use the wrong study design. We will further study there are different study designs, like there is an observational study, there is an cohort study, there is an case control studies, there are case reports, there are series case reports. So what kind of study design the researcher should carry out? Okay, for different researches there are different research designs should be carried out. So we have to determine that. In certain other situations the researcher might use the right method incorrectly, though he has adopted the right method, but he is not properly using that method. Sometimes the investigator may misinterpret the results. The results might be saying something, but the investigator is understanding something else, or the investigator may report their results selectively. Okay, the author has achieved certain results. Okay, but he has highlighted some of the results of his or her study, but he has not highlighted the other aspects of their study. So this will produce a bias. Okay, maybe deliberately he don't want to highlight certain things because he is that are not into his favor, or that will decrease the importance of his study. So sometimes the authors may skip certain important things into the studies, or sometimes the references of the other studies that are required to be given, that we said in the discussion we compare our study with the past studies. Okay, so sometimes we are not making correct comparisons into the past studies, so that we can highlight that our studies has shown some significant results, and based on that we draw the investigator will draw unjustified conclusions. Okay, that way the thing will not be actually happening. Okay, the thing has not actually happened, the therapeutic effect or the effect of the drug has not been achieved in such a manner, but the investigator has highlighted the thing in such a way that is an unjustified conclusion, or there is an unjustified research. So to avoid those such kind of the problem into the research studies, the biomedical journal editors, the researchers, the statisticians, and certain authors have made certain standards to validate that the studies or the research is conducted into a proper manner. This is called as the consolidated standards of reporting trials. The primary literature may involve the pharmacokinetic studies, in which the investigator will be investigating the drug pharmacokinetic parameters such as the volume of distribution, metabolism of the drug, and elimination of the drugs. The investigators may also determine the bioavailability of the drug or bioequivalence of the drugs or the dosage forms. The investigator may go for the drug interactions, or the drug that include drug interactions, drug food interactions, or any of the drug interaction that are based onto the genetics. And these most studies are mostly carried out during the phase 1 and phase 2 of the clinical trials. There are four phases of the clinical trials: phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these studies are most often carried out during the phase 1 and phase 2. And during the phase 1 and phase 2, the drug are tried onto the animals and on the humans, but in small numbers, and the volunteers are healthy and their consent is taken before the studies. The primary literature can also involve the pharmacodynamic studies, in which we are observing the effects of the drug onto the body of the patient. We are observing the therapeutic effects of the drug or the toxic effects of the drug, and these are most often carried out during the preclinical or the phase 1 trials of the drug, though these can also be carried out at the phase 4 or the marketing phase of the drug. But most often these are carried out at the preclinical and the phase 1 trials, and be carried out onto the animals and the humans as well. In the primary literature, we can also go for the pharmacoeconomic studies, in which we are evaluating that whether the cost of therapy with one therapeutic agent will be less, or the cost of therapy with other therapeutic agent will be less, or the different regimens for the different disease states, whether they will be cost effective or not. So we have to go for it and use the combinations which are less costly. And as we have earlier studied, that if we decrease the cost of the therapy, there will be more patient compliance. And while we are discussing the pharmacoeconomics, we will not go for the cost of a one tablet, that one tablet is cheaper than the other. We will not say that the tablet which is cheaper will be providing more effective treatment, or the more treatment for the longer period of time. Okay, the cost of the therapy will be compared with the overall achievement of the therapeutic goals. Okay, maybe one tablet that is providing the therapeutic effects may be expensive, but the drug will be providing the therapeutic effects for longer period of time. The other drug, though its tablets are much cheaper, but if these are not providing the therapeutic effects for longer period of time, we will not use that drug, though its single tablet is very much cheaper. But if it is not providing the longer term effects, we will not use this. Now similar example is given over here. In a patient, if we are having the option of using the tricyclic antidepressants, and we have also the SSRIs, so we can go for the tricycle antidepressants, but though these are cheaper, but they are not providing longer term effects. However, the SSRIs are providing the longer term effects, and with the SSRIs, the chances of hospitalization are also less. Now, if the chances of hospitalization with the SSRIs are also less, that means eventually the cost of therapy will be decreasing. Maybe the SSRI single tablet may be more expensive than the tricyclic antidepressants, but overall effect on the therapy will result into the decrease into the cost of the treatment. And these type of the studies are mostly carried out during the phase 4 of the trials, or during the marketed surveillance of the drugs. In the clinical methodology studies, different therapies for the treatment of the disease, are different diagnostic methods or investigative methods are evaluated, that whether these are effective than the other methods that are used for a specific disease condition. And these will provide us more convenient and less expensive and less invasive means of making the measurements or the diagnosis or the treatments, because the patients prefer the non-invasive methods for the diagnosis as well as for the treatment purposes. So in the clinical methodology, we are evaluating the different treatments or the different diagnostic or investigative methods, and we compare with them with each other, and eventually we come up with a method that will be more convenient and less expensive for the patient. So into a pharmacoepidemiologic studies, we are evaluating the effects of the drugs on the larger number of people. And when we are observing these effects on the larger number of people, we will be observing new things. Maybe a new therapeutic effect will be observed. Maybe a new adverse effect will be observed. And this will help into the addition of the new therapeutic effects into the literature of the drugs, addition of the new side effect into the literature of the drugs. And even there are certain situations in which when these epidemiological studies are carried out onto the patients, such kind of the adverse effects are have been found onto the patient that sometimes the drugs have been withdrawn from the market. There are certain times when the drugs have been widely used into the society, but afterwards it was found that the drug may cause a cancer situation or any other serious disease condition, and those drugs were withdrawn from the market. And in such type of the studies, mostly the cohort studies or the case control studies are followed. In the quality of life studies, we actually evaluate that whether the therapeutic effects of certain drugs are increasing the quality of the life of the patients, or whether the adverse effect produced by some drugs may be decreasing the quality of life of the patients. While we are doing the treatment, we try that the patient come to its original life or come to its normal life, achieve a quality life. So if specific therapeutic goals are not achieved, of course the patient cannot live a quality life. If more adverse effects are produced by the drug, the patient cannot have a quality life because he will be disturbed due to the adverse effects of the drugs. So in this, we compare in between the different treatments of the disease with the different drugs, and we say that whether this drug is more effective and helping the patient to have a more quality life, or the other drug that is helping a patient to have a quality life. Even the drugs from the same therapeutic class can be used, or from the same pharmacological class will be compared with each other, and it will be identified that whether this drug is effective or the other drugs is effective as compared to the first one. And these kind of studies are again most oftenly carried out during the phase 4 trials, because in this stage the more number of the patients are using the drugs, and we can observe that these effects are the quality of life of the patients have been improved or not. So this is all about clinical drug literature. Thank you very much.